Hello aspirants, welcome to UPSC Geek by NRG. I am hoping that you are all doing fine and striving each day. Today we shall be starting the lecture number 3, that is Plato part 1. Okay, so trust me, it is one of the most interesting topic of the PSIR lecture series, and we will be doing this complete Plato series in parts because it is too large to handle in once, so that it will also become very easier and convenient for you all to process the concepts and remember it for the longer duration of time. Okay, so without any further ado, let's begin with the session. And before moving further, ensure to subscribe to the channel, that is UPSC Geek, for further lecture updates and interesting surprises. Okay, so let's start with part 1 basically, guys. So these are the number of previous year questions. Like Plato is very important topic in paper 1 of PSIR. There are several questions. These are some of the important questions which have been frequently asked in optional examination, and going through the entire lecture series, I ensure that you will be able to attempt each and every answer asked in the PYQs, and also the test series that you guys will opt to take for from the various coaching centers. Okay, so this will be the table of content. Today we will be dealing with mainly 4 topics, that is introduction to Plato, that will basically consider the life and time of Plato. Second, we will be dealing with allegory of cave, very important allegory which is given by Plato to support various of his theories. Okay, third is the theory of forms or the ideas, again very important topic from the point of view of Plato's political philosophy. And the last for today will be the myth of metal, that is noble lie. Okay, so let's start with the introduction of Plato, that is life and time of Plato. Okay, so born around 428 BC in Athens and grew up during the famous Peloponnesian War. Okay, so you can see in the map the region of Peloponnesian, the Athens and Olympia, and the Greece continents basically, and have a brief idea about the same. Okay, so who was the Plato? Plato was the student of Socrates, okay, and the teacher of Aristotle. Plato wrote on wide variety of topics including politics, philosophy, cosmology, and epistemology. We will be seeing each of them in detail in further lecture series. Don't worry about it, just remember it and take down the points so that you can write the universal introduction and conclusion for the Plato questions asked in the exam. Okay, so this is the basic agenda behind including the pointers in very elaborate manner, so that you guys can like take down the points in your notes. Okay, Plato belonged to an aristocratic family, right, which was also a part of the oligarchy that ruled Athens for a short time. Okay, so before the Peloponnesian War, there was an oligarchy, aristocratic family which was ruling the Athens. Okay, so Plato belonged to one of the family of the aristocratic family basically. Okay, after the execution of his teacher by the state in 399 BC, Plato left Athens to travel in Europe and Egypt for over a decade, studying various subjects. Okay, as we have seen in the lecture series number 2, that is of Socrates, how Socrates was made to drink hemlock and accept death. Okay, so by the same aristocratic oligarchy ruling class of from which the Plato belonged. Okay, after that, after coming to realize the true evil nature of that aristocratic family, Plato decided to leave Athens and traveled in Europe and Egypt over a decade, studying various subjects. Okay, so after returning, he founded a university called the Academy. Okay, after returning from all the continental voyage of Europe and Egypt, he returned back to Athens and found a university called as Academy around 387 BC. While there, Plato wrote several literatures including the Republic, Symposium, and the Laws. Okay, these are the magnum opus of the Republic, magnum opus of the Plato, that are Republic, Symposium, and the Laws. So whatever theory we know about the Plato comes from these works of Plato. Okay, even the Socrates is known from this work of Plato and several other ancient Greek authors. Okay, during his career, Plato also had some teaching adventures, particularly with the rulers of Sicily, an island in Italy. Okay, so rulers of Sicily was being taught by Plato. He was also a student. Sicily is an basically island state in Italy. Unfortunately, all of them ended disastrously, and Plato had to escape for their life. Whatever doctrine Plato possessed was very idealistic in nature, and most of the time it was not in concurrent with the ideas that was beheld by the ruling classes. Okay, so they were always in opposition, and hence Plato had to escape for his life twice. A paradox for this great thinker who thought that he could enlighten the rulers while they were not ready to hear. Okay, it is also important to note here that all of this did not weaken the faith of Plato that philosophy can alter the human condition. Okay, Plato had this very firm belief that philosophy possessed the power to alter the human condition. Hence, he always stuck back to his doctrine of philosophy. Okay, so again, so if Socrates is known as father of philosophy, okay, that is ethics, who described the meaning of good life, Plato is known as father of political philosophy. Very important, people, like note down this point that Plato is known as father of political philosophy. It will also like ensure to include this statement in your answer. It will give you an edge. Okay, since he was the first person in Western world to give an elaborate theory of state and politics. Okay, fair point. The biggest contribution of Plato is the theory of the philosopher king. Okay, that how Athens, a city state, must be ruled by a philosopher king. Okay, who can take that the city state to a ideal state or the perfect state. Okay, according to him, the state is ideal where philosophers are the rulers in the so okay, so he says that the state is ideal where philosophers are the rulers. Okay, so Plato gives a statement which says that until philosophers are the rulers or the rulers learn philosophy, until philosophers are the rulers or rulers learn philosophy, there is no end to the predicament of human life. Okay, until philosophers become rulers or rulers learn philosophy, there is no end to the suffering or the predicament of the human life. Okay, so this is the magnum opus of the Plato. Magnum opus is like the best work for which Plato is known. Okay, that is Republic. So it is the magnum opus of the Plato. So Plato's political thought discussed here is mainly based on his book Republic. Okay, whatever or the most of the political theory which we will be discussing of Plato belong to this work of Plato, that is the Republic. Okay, regarded as one of the greatest work in political philosophy by all accounts. Okay, so whoever historians have attempted to give an account on Republic, on the Plato's Republic, they have regarded it as one of the greatest work of Plato. Okay, the safest common characterization of a European philosophical custom is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. This is a statement given by A.N. Whitehead, again a great political theorist. He says that the safest common characterization of European philosophical custom is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. Okay, I do not mean the systematic scheme of thought which scholars have doubtfully extracted from his writing. I allude to the wealth of common thoughts scattered through them. Okay, so he's saying that whatever thought we had in the modern European or medieval European nation, it is basically a footnote to Plato's theories in Republic. They all are derived or got a gist somewhere from the Plato's various theory, which are elaborated in his work Republic. Okay. So sometimes the questions is also asked like comment that the entire political philosophy is a footnote to Plato. So these are the idea which needs to be mentioned. This statement, particularly in introduction or conclusion, will fetch you a great marks. So ensure to make a note of it. Okay. So okay, let's look at what are the various source of influence on Plato who had a great impact on Plato, which nudged Plato to make his theory elaborate on the political science. Okay, so uh, he was influenced by Socrates, first his teacher himself. Okay, the great Socrates. So how he was influenced by Socrates? He was mainly influenced by the Socrates view that knowledge is virtue. Okay, knowledge is virtue. Okay, which means ignorance is vice. If knowledge is virtue, for sure ignorance is vice. If Athens has to become a virtuous state, it has to be ruled by knowledge and not the ignorance. Okay, and as we know that the aristocratic family which was ruling Athens during that time were completely ignorance of the various issues which were prevailing in the state. Okay, so he says that knowledge or the state must be ruled by a knowledge and not ignorant. Okay, then the second influence he had is of Pythagoras, the mathematician. Okay, the entire universe is based on mathematical principles, theory of soul. So he also the theory of soul of Plato is also inspired by Pythagoras idea. but soul is again not a Western concept. Soul is somewhere an Indian concept. So it is generally regarded that Pythagoras was somewhere influenced by the Indian concept of soul, and he has taken the same concept to the Western world. Okay, the soul is not the idea which is of Western countries. Indeed, it is of India. Okay, and it is indeed one of the very sought after concept of Plato, that the theory of soul. Okay, and which is somewhere inspired by the Indian philosophy. Okay, the third influence he had is of Heraclitus. Again, Heraclitus, uh, philosopher himself, according to him, change is the characteristic of this world. He says that change is the only constant. Change is the only characteristic of this world. Okay, on the other side, there is a Parmenides who also says that continuity with permanence is also the characteristic of this world. Change is not only the characteristic of this world, but there is also a sense of permanence which is also the characteristics of this world. Okay, so he is somewhere trying to balance out the statement given by the Heraclitus. Okay, so these were the four influence on the Plato. So let's see what are the major concern of Plato which nudged him to formulate his various theories, right? Being in Athens, what is bothering Plato so that he is willing to work on political philosophy, right? So Plato was the disciple of Socrates, perhaps the greatest one. Plato's work draw upon the idea of Socrates, and we can say that he continues where Socrates lived. Okay, basically he is continuing the legacy of his teacher, that was Socrates. On the major concern of Plato was to give the theory of an ideal state and to publish that politics and philosophy are no different. Okay, again a very valid point that politics and philosophy are no different. Okay, he wanted to give a theory of an ideal state until a ruler become a philosopher, or a rural, until a philosopher become a ruler, or ruler learns philosophy, there can be no end to human predicament. Okay, that was the statement given by Plato. Okay, so this is the statement which is most elicit in this statement, that he wanted to establish that there is no difference between politics and philosophy. Okay, through his theory, Plato seeks to create an ideal state, or at least establish a standard with which we can judge existing political practices. Okay, he suggests that justice is the greatest good that people can attain individually and collectively, and all of his theories point in this direction. Okay, so his second idea, his second most important concept is about allegory of cave. So basically allegory is an example or illustration given to prove any theory or concept. Okay, so to prove his various theories, like theories of form, which we will be doing in further lecture series, then again his theory of justice and etc., he has continuously mentioned this allegory of cave, or the example of this cave, how there are people who are ignorant being inside the cave and not willing to accept their ignorance and embrace the true knowledge. Okay, so let's see what his allegory of cave is all about. In the Republic, Plato uses the story of allegory of cave, okay, to illustrate the three different levels of understanding and help us illustrate the difference between illusion, that is ignorance, and real knowledge. So basically through this concept of allegory of cave, Plato wants to explicit the real difference between illusion, that is ignorance, and real knowledge. Okay, so imagine, says Plato, that people live in a cave and are chained so that they can only see the back wall of the cave. Okay, so here people are, there is a other side, we can see there is an opening to the cave and people are facing the back side of the cave. Okay, and they are chained so that we can see the shackles on their hands. Okay, and they are seeing the shadow. Okay, they are facing towards the wall, there is a open to the cave on the other side, and they are seeing the shadow of the moving ladies on the wall, back wall of the cave. Okay, so Plato says that people live in a cave and are chained so that they can only see the back wall of the cave. These people are chained so that they cannot leave the cave. Okay, behind them is a fence which men walk backwards and forward. Okay, forward, so holding human like objects and animals, and other things that we usually see in day-to-day life. Okay, so basically here the symbolism is the materialistic things which we see on our daily life and that we consider to be a real things. Okay, but actually according to Plato they are not, they are just the shadows. Okay, so behind the fence is a fire that casts a shadow on this object on the cave wall. Okay, so there is a fire or the light which is casting a shadow on the back wall of the cave. Okay, now the people who have spent their entire lives chained in the caves facing its back wall will think that the shadow cast on the wall represent reality. Okay, very valid point, that we the people who are almost chained with our ignorance and we are not willing to break that chain, we usually consider the materialistic things or the forms of the real world as a real, but in the true sense they are the nothing but a shadow of this world. In Indian philosophy we call the concept of a Maya, which is very related to this concept of allegory of cave. Okay, that whatever we see in our mundane world is nothing but a Maya, okay, or a shadow. However, these are the images of some objects behind the fence. Okay, so we are saying behind the fence there is a real object, but on the wall what they are saying is nothing but a shadow of the real object. Okay, so this state of awareness, thinking of shadows images to be reality, Plato calls them imagining. Okay, so whatever the thing we are seeing as a shadow and we are considering them to be real are nothing but imagining, our imagination. Okay, our imagination of the what, our imagination of the real objects. Okay, so suppose, however, that one of the cavemen was freed from chains and forced to turn around. At first, the light from the fire will blind him, but he will get used to it eventually. Even this stage, he would witness the source of images and fire and the fence and the object casting the shadows. This state of understanding Plato calls belief. This is, however, not a state of ultimate knowledge, since the object casting shadow in themselves are not the real object. Okay, so what happens, Plato says that if one of the cavemen, he just breaking his chains, escapes outside the cave. Okay, on first tense, when he will see the real light, okay, he will not be able to see directly, because all of his life whatever he saw was the darkness. Okay, and when he sees the real life, his eyes won't be able to adjust to the real light and there are chances that he will go blind. Okay, what does it symbolizing is that when people really encounter the real life, okay, the real world or the real thing, real idea, they usually get blindfolded of the materialistic mundane world, right? Again, Plato is making this distinction that it is not very easy to face that reality. Sometimes it can blind us. Okay, it is not easier for us to accept those realities, but he will get used to it eventually. When we stay on the path of our realization, self-realization, eventually we will get used to it. Okay, in this stage he would witness the source of images and fire and the fence and object casting shadow. At this stage, Plato is saying that the caveman will see the sources of those shadows, not even the real things, like sources where the fire, the human beings who were walking behind the fence. Okay, he will see those sources, and he will come to the understanding that they were the sources of those shadows. Okay, they were the sources, not even the reality. And this stage Plato calls as a belief. Okay, this will be the belief that whatever I was seeing was nothing but an ignorance, and whatever now I am seeing is the source of those shadows. Okay, this is, however, not a state of ultimate knowledge. The source of shadows are again not the state of ultimate knowledge. There is a step beyond that. Okay, so since the object casting shadows in themselves are not real objects, they are also not real objects. The highest state of cognition will be achieved, says Plato, when a person is dragged out of the cave. There he can see the sun, the source of all light, and all the other object in their original form. Okay, so Plato is saying that when the person, the freed caveman, drags outside the entire contours of cave, and when he steps out and when he sees the real sun, which is the ultimate source of light, the knowledge, then he will encounter the true knowledge. Okay, or the real object in their original form, and that will be the true knowledge at the end, according to the Plato. Okay, this is what Plato wants to exhibits according to his allegory of cave. Okay, so there are three stages basically Plato talks about. First is imagination, where they consider shadow to be real. Second is belief, when the freed caveman, he steps outside and he sees sources of those shadow, and he comes to the realization that the shadow which we were seeing are not real, they were just our belief. And third, when he breaks the complete chain, and when he steps outside and he sees the sun, that is when he realizes that that is the real object, or the true object, or the real knowledge. Okay, that is the original form. So this was all about his allegory of cave, guys. Now we are seeing the third most important concept, that is theory of forms or idea of Plato. Okay, so what it is? So Plato's theory of forms, also known as theory of idea. So theory of form or theory of idea is one of the same. Either you get in the exam as theory of form or theory of idea, you have to write the same stuffs. Okay, is the fundamental aspect of his philosophy. Okay, it is very fundamental aspect upon which there several other theories are also edified upon. Okay, the theory is presented in several dialogues with the most extensive treatment found in Phaedo, Symposium, and most notably in the Republic. The three are the work. They are basically 10 volumes of Plato. Okay, one is Phaedo, Symposium, Republic, and so and so and so. So the mention of the theory of forms or the theory of idea we see mainly in Phaedo, Symposium, and the most notably in Republic. Okay, for Plato, form cannot be seen but only can be understood. Okay, so Plato is saying, Plato is basically expounding the idea that form cannot be seen but it can only be understood through reason. Okay, reason here is basically dialectics, again Socratic school of education, that is dialectics. As explained by Plato, everything we see around us has an ideal form. Okay, whatever we see is the materialistic thing, but it also contains a sense of an ideal form in it. Okay, be it humans, tree, or fruit, something, everything has a corresponding ideal form. Okay, all of these forms exist in a transcendental reality. Readers may consider this as something of a spiritual world. Okay, very valid point. So what here Plato wants to say, let's say there is a fruit, an apple. Okay, so we see different types of apple. Green apple, there is a Shimla variety of apple, there is a Kashmir variety of apple, there is a Washington variety of apple, and etc. But a sense of appleness is universal among all the different varieties, right? We can distinct between the between the green apple and Washington apple, but we can still know that this is an apple. Okay, both are the apple. Why? Because there is a sense of appleness in it, the texture, the shape, and etc. So this, according to Plato, are nothing but a form which are transcendental throughout the different varieties of the reality. Okay, so similar to the physical object, concepts such as justice, courage, temperance, state, etc. also have an ideal form in its transcendental reality. So justice, like we talk about distributive justice, right, where the equals are not treated equal must be treated equally and unequal must be treated unequally. Okay, but at the end, the end notion or the end goal is to attain justice. Okay, distributive justice or retributive justice. So end is the justiceness through different types of justice we are rendering upon the citizens. Okay, so that is what a Plato called as a final or ultimate form or idea, as a transcendental reality. Okay, so let's see what is the background of Plato's theory of form. Before moving to the background, guys, you can have this image as well, where a person sees a real world and a person sees just a materialistic world. Okay, this is two distinction which is beautifully presented in this image. Okay, so Plato says that the real object, that is the sunlight, is a good knowledge. Okay, or the real knowledge, and whatever we see is as in the materialistic world are nothing but our illusion or the ignorance. Okay, so we have to transcend from the material world to the real world. Okay, so let's jump into the background. So Plato's theory of forms emerged as a response to the philosophical problem posed by Heraclitus and Parmenides. Okay, as we have seen the two problems, that change is the only characteristics of the world, but Parmenides expounds that not only change but also a sense of permanence is a characteristics of world. So these are the two statements of the extremes, and here Plato is stepping in to balance these two extremities. Okay, so Heraclitus argued that constant change, while Parmenides argued for a static unchanging reality, also that is sense of permanence. Plato sought a middle ground, madhyama agama buddha. Okay, so what are the two realms of Plato? Okay, so what according to Plato are the two realms of this universe. Okay, Plato posited the existence of two realms, that is sensible world, which we can see by their appearance, and the intelligible world, that is world of forms, which can only be understood through reasoning. Okay, sensible world and intelligible world. Sensible world, which can be sensed by our senses, which we can see, which we can hear, which we can taste, etc. and etc. And intelligible world, which can only be understood by reasons. Okay, these are the two of the realms given by the Plato. Okay, the sensible world is the world we perceive through our senses, characterized by imperfection, change, and uncertainty. So here he is giving a reasoning to the Heraclitus idea that there is a sensible world which is only changing. Okay, like change is the only characteristics of the world. So here Heraclitus has said that. So here Plato is expounding the idea of sensible world, which is in which this change is the only characteristic. Okay, it will continuously change. Okay, it will be imperfect, change, and uncertainty. And again, there is a intelligible world, or the world of forms is a non-material realm of perfect, unchanging, and eternal concept of forms. Okay, and again, as Parmenides said that there is also a permanence in this world. So Plato is giving the idea of intelligible world, or the world of form, which is non-material. Okay, which is non-material, unchanging, and eternal, which is like long-lasting or everlasting in the nature. The next logical question is, how does one understand these forms? Okay, we hear lot of things about theory of like forms, intelligible world, it can only be understood by reasoning, and etc. and etc. But the very legit question is, how does one understand these forms, right? So since they are in fact objects of understanding, Plato says it cannot be explained in words. So Plato here is saying that it cannot be explained in words, it can only be understood by reasoning. Okay, a mere oral or textual explanation is not enough. Okay, it can only be understood by practice, through years of training in mathematics and dialectics, through gradual. That's why the education becomes very important in our lives as well, guys. Like most of the time we confine our vision of education only to rote learning, but rote learning is not actually a true education. The true education is the sheer practice of mathematics, dialectics, in any subject matter. Okay, with gradual, I have seen the end degree, the most ultimate degree we get is the masters in philosophy, MPhil. Okay, so what is MPhil? MPhil is where you become a philosopher of that particular subject. Okay, when you reach to the ultimate pinnacle of that particular subject, and there you get to realize the true essence of this world, either by mathematics or by science, or as in my case in psychology, or various subject matters. Okay, so that is the true purpose of education, that is rigorous training in different streams of knowledge, that is science, mathematics, or various social sciences, and etc. Okay, for which Plato gives the theory of education. See, very connecting point. Okay, here you can connect various points in Plato's theory of form. You will be able to connect his theory of education, which we will deal in next part. Okay, so we can also compare the concept of understanding forms of Plato with the concept of adhikar, or eligibility. Okay, so there is a very beautiful concept of adhikara Veda in Indian philosophy. Okay, so adhikar is something which is when you become eligible to gain any knowledge. Okay, so we cannot teach philosophy to a child, okay, to a school going child, but we can teach philosophy to someone who has undergone the process of self-realization, because his sense of perceptibility will somewhere help him or enhance his cognitive ability to accept or learn the in-depth concept of philosophy. Okay, so adhikar is basically, in a simple term, means eligibility in Indian philosophy. Okay, as Hindu text suggests, to understand certain concept, a learner first need to have achieved that level of realization, that is adhikara. So what is adhikar? Like in general sense also we talk sometimes कि ये मेरा अधिकार है. Okay, so what is adhikar? Adhikara is basically a righteousness, that I have this righteousness to say this, or I have righteousness to vote, let's say. Okay, I have right to vote. Okay, so what is this? Basically, when we become eligible, when we cross the age limit of, let's say, 18, universal adult franchise, we become eligible to vote, right? So we are becoming eligible to be righteousness in order to do something. Okay, so this is basically a concept of adhikar is all about. So these concepts cannot be taught orally or written down. Okay, this only comes with age, practice, and dedication. So this doctrine of adhikar also explains why different Vedic literature are meant for different classes of people and why there are apparent contradictions. Okay, so we have seen there are several Vedic literature, right? Like Rig Vedas, then there is a Sama Veda, Atur Veda, Yajur Veda, and etc. are meant for different classes of people. That the Brahmanas can only excel in Vedas. Okay, we call Chaturvedis, let's say, who are like masters of 4 Vedas, and they can only master them and not the other classes or the clans. Okay, and why there are apparent contradictions, people, because people are at different levels of adhikara. So here we can connect this notion of Plato with this notion of adhikara to varna system of our Indian philosophy, right? That people are at their different levels of adhikara or eligibility. Everyone cannot excel in, let's say, brahmanical matters or education and etc. or warrior class, that are Kshatriyas, or business class Vaishyas, or the other classes mentioned in varna ashram system of Indian philosophy. Okay, so this is the relevance in a Indian arena, which can be connected via Plato's theory of forms. Okay, so just like you can mention these connections or anecdotes in your answers, it will give you a good essence of quality to your answer, guys. Okay, so what are the implications of Plato's theory of form? When I say implications, basically political implications. Okay, because we are reading here political science and not the philosophy. So there are several implications of Plato theory of forms, and it will become more apparent as we proceed through the topic. Okay, there are various theories which we will be dealing in our lecture series, and as we will see the various theories of Plato, it will become very apparent that how his various theories are influenced by his theory of form. Okay, the foremost is the proposition of Plato that ideal form can only be understood by years of practice and study. As he says that the ideal form or the intelligible world can only be understood by years of practice and study. Thus, it cannot be comprehended by general public, which in turn alienates them from politics. Okay, basically he is supporting his idea of philosopher king, that it is not a easy job for every class to be in the politics class. Only there is a certain class which are made or eligible to be a part of politics. Okay, so it basically alienates the other classes from the politics. The situation later Plato explains by the division of labor. Okay, which when we compare Plato's theory of forms with his allegory of caves, it becomes clear that the cave represents the world of appearance and objects in the material realm. Okay, so very valid point, that the cave or the shadow in the cave basically represents the material realm or the mundane things which we see in our day-to-day life. Okay, and outside the cave is a metaphysical world, metaphysical reality. What is metaphysical reality? Metaphysical reality is basically the reality which cannot be sensed through our senses. It can only be understood by dialectics or reasoning. Okay, so metaphysical reality is the ultimate knowledge or the ultimate idea. Okay, so the awareness of being inside the cave and not having real knowledge presents a situation when Socrates remarks, I know that I know nothing. Okay, so the first stage in attaining the real knowledge. So in Plato here is saying that the first stage in attaining any real knowledge is that you have to make yourself aware that you are ignorant about the real knowledge, or you are ignorant about the real idea of the things or true knowledge. Okay, you are just keeping yourself shackled in the world of materialism or in materialistic world. Okay, same with the case of Socrates. He became wisest when he came to the realization that I know nothing. Okay, so this is the first stage, that you have to accept your ignorance and you have to embrace on the way of learning, as Buddha did. Okay, that he realized how ignorant he was, and he let go all his royalties, and he upholded the path of dharma, right? So that was the first stage, that you are at least accepting your sense of ignorance and you are embracing the path of true knowledge or the learning. The search for discovering the truth is represented by leaving the cave when one can see the real forms of everything and has attained knowledge. Okay, so as one leaps, or as a caveman breaks his chain and tries to leave the cave, that is where the true discovery for the truth begins. Okay, obviously one cannot have a knowledge by being inside the cave. Inside the cave, the whole premises is based on illusory reality. Okay, whatever things that the caveman sees inside the shadow is nothing but an illusory reality. They are not the real objects. Okay, where mere images and not true objects. Okay, thus people can have different opinions about reality, but not the knowledge. Okay, people can have knowledge, opinion of the different realities, and which they think to be true, but they are not the true knowledge. Okay, and the knowledge, suggests Plato, can only be shown, since explaining to those inside the cave is not going to work. They have not seen what a true knowledge is. Until and unless we don't see them true knowledge, they will not be able to accept that whatever they are seeing inside the premises of the cave are nothing but their illusion. Okay, so that is also a basic idea of behind ideal state as well. Until and unless you don't know how a ideal state looks like, you will not be able to make that distinction between ignorant and ideal state, right? Until and unless you don't know what a bad is, you will not be able to know what a good is, right? If you don't know what a dark is, you will not be able to make distinction what a light is. अगर आप जान जाते हैं कि क्या बुरा है, तो आपको पता लग जाएगा कि हाँ ये सब बुरा है, मुझे ये सब नहीं करना है, then you will ultimately do whatever is good. Okay, so this is a basic logic behind it. If you know the true knowledge, you will be able to realize that yes, whatever I was nothing more than an ignorant, and this is the true knowledge for me. Okay, further, Plato also suggests that when a person is exposed to the light outside the cave, at first his eyes ache because of the sudden light. Okay, so when a caveman tries to escape the cave, when he sees the real light outside the cave, first his eyes ache because of sudden light. Okay, indicating that knowledge does not come easily and it is painful process at first. Okay, so whenever we try to ignore or try to escape our ignorance, the first thing at masses comes is distraction. Okay, when we try to, let's say, walk on the path of self-realization, meditation and etc., there are lot of distraction which comes our way, which basically symbolizes that real knowledge or true knowledge is not an easy task. Okay, it is very painful process at first, but here the concept of dedication, perseverance comes, where when an individual perseveres through that process of painful pain or the turbulence, he will or she will be able to let go or pass through the painful process and reach the state of true knowledge. Okay, same in the case of UPSC as well. During our preparatory process, we go through tons of problems, issues and etc., but once we get through the process, once we get selected, all those processes becomes very meager in front of the happiness or the satisfaction that we accrue while getting through the process, that whatever hard work we yielded during overcoming of that painful processes, it is paying off right now. Okay, so this is also the reason people inside the cave are unwilling to give up their understanding of reality, okay, and come out of the cave. So very general tendency that most of the people, they choose not to leave their comfort zones because it is painful. Okay, and hence the cavemen also, they are not striving their best to come out of the cave, or that is the world of ignorance, because somewhere they know that it is very painful process. Okay, this is the reason why Plato gives his elaborate theory of education, designed to drag young peoples out of his cave of ignorance and make them realize true knowledge. How exactly Plato intends to achieve it, we'll learn in the theory of education. Okay, so this is the theory which is being given to the young people, okay, basically to make them realize the state of ignorance they are in right now. Okay, and just to give them the idea that there is a world of a true knowledge which exists, and they should drag themselves out of the cave of ignorance, which initially can be painful, but once they make themselves escape that cave and step into the world of true knowledge, it will be a great place to be in. Okay, so further we will be seeing this concept in elaboration in his theory of education basically. So explaining further, Plato suggests that people inside the cave are not only ignorant of the true reality but are even ignorant about it. Okay, so people are not ignorant about the true reality, but they are ignorant that they are ignorant as well. They are arrogant as well. Okay, they are not only ignorant about the true reality, but they are arrogant about it as well. That Okay, they cannot, like Socrates did, admit their ignorance. They are not willing to accept their ignorance, and they are becoming ignorant about it. Okay, so and because they are so stubborn about it, the teacher who tries to drag them out of the cave appears unrealistic and the object of scorn. This is also the reason why Socrates earned the hatred of Athenian politician and was subjected to death. Okay, this is the reason of Socrates execution given by the Plato. Okay, that is why the people of Athens, especially the ruling class, did not like Socrates, because they are arrogant about them being not accepting the true ignorance. Okay, so what is the criticism of his theory of form? So critics argue that theory of forms raises questions about the nature of the relationship between sensible and intelligible world. Okay, so what kind of relationship do sensible and intelligible worlds have? Okay, so is there any real distinction between them, or it is just an idea? If it is just an idea, how do we get to the idea, right? Because it becomes very difficult for us to make that intelligible difference here, to really differentiate between a sensible and intelligible world, because it is very human for us to only know the things which we can sense, right? The concept of tabula rasa, which is given, which says basically that human is nothing but a blank slate, and through our experiences, our senses, we tend to learn things. So when senses are only sole source of knowledge for the people, how they will get to the intelligible world? So here the nature of relationship becomes very difficult. Okay, so despite criticism, Plato theory of form has had a profound influence on Western philosophy, especially in shaping discussion on metaphysics, epistemology, and nature of reality. Okay, so these are different school of political philosophy. So it has become a great influence on these particular schools while formulating their philosophy. Okay, so this is the criticism which you can write in your answers as well when a question on theory of forms are asked. Okay, so the conclusion which we can attempt here is that Plato's theory of form remains a cornerstone of his philosophical system. Okay, addressing fundamental questions about the nature of reality, knowledge, and relationship between material and immaterial realms. Okay, so this is we end here the Plato's theory of form.